Welcome back to the Third Stringers podcast. I'm your host, Noah Kratz. With me right now is Justin Arbini. We have Paige out this week. Unfortunately, she's not going to be able to gloat because she had the most points out of us in our March Madness bracket. But we'll get into that. Let's go off with first things first.
Or do you want to do the intro first? We'll do the intro first. Well, I thought we were doing the intro.
We'll do the intro first.
We'll do the intro.
We'll do the intro first.
Here we go.
It's all right. We're testing.
We're not the starters. We're not even the backups. This is the Third Stringers podcast.
All right. So our topics today are going to be we got a couple of spicy ones here. First, we're gonna give a nice shout out to our friend from back home on his victory in our March Madness bracket. We're going to talk about the MVP race in the NBA. It's coming down to the wire between two guys. And we're going to do a pitch clock update from the MLB after the first week. Plus, we got a nice little spicy tweet from an LSU champ. Let's roll. Let's go with first things first.
First things first. First things first.
All right. First things first, we got to talk about that championship game. I'm going to be honest. It was a little bit of a boring championship game. It really felt like the game before the Final Four game between Miami and UConn was the better game. But, there was some hype around it coming out of the second half. San Diego State started to make a run. The final score of that game was 76-59, UConn. And, in the first half, it really didn't seem that close. UConn was blowing them out of the water. They just looked like the better team. They had the better talent. But yeah, congratulations, UConn Huskies. You could probably honestly put them into a blue blood conversation at this point, just by how many championships they've won in the past 12 years.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think they've won three or four of the last 10 years or something like that.
Yeah, 2011, 14, and now 23.
Yeah, so I would definitely put them up there, especially with the decline of UNC and some of the true blue bloods the past couple seasons. Like, yeah, definitely I would throw UConn's name into the ring there.
Yeah, we saw Duke take a bit of a decline this year without Coach K. Their new coach doesn't have that experience going into a March Madness tournament. And with the one and done seasons, it's a little hard for some of these blue bloods to consistently compete in the tournament because they have such young talent. It's pretty raw, and sometimes they don't mesh together. Kentucky's kind of the same way. Kansas has made it significantly further than the rest of the blue bloods, though. I think they're kind of on a different level right now, but they were never really part of that blue blood mentality at the beginning either. So honestly, if you had to put together a new blue blood conversation, do you have a different core other than the ones we've seen in the past?
Besides UNC, Duke, I would say, Kansas is a little bit less historical than Duke in them. So I guess I would put them in a core. I would put UConn now that they won again. Villanova in the past few years. I know they're not, they've never historically been that either. But I would say those three are like the newer additions that I would say I can consistently see making it to the Sweet 16 every year, as long as, they have some sort of talent. But yeah, again, shout out to UConn. They played very well in both games, right? They only let 59 points for the finals and the Final Four. So just proves defense does win championships. I was wrong when we were making our predictions. It's not just about outscoring, but they handedly outscored the other team as well. They look great doing it. I think this year's March Madness as a whole kind of shows the effects of the one and done seasons and how over the past 10, 15 years of talent coming in and leaving as soon as possible, that you have such a spread of talent now. Like San Diego State, who would have guessed that they would have been in the Final Four? Who would have guessed that FAU would have made it to the Final Four? Right? I think just kind of the pandemic and this one and done culture that's been plaguing the NCAA leagues has kind of spread out the talent and given the chance for others to rise up to the top. So that's been exciting, but it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. You don't see like those absolutely dominant teams anymore. And I think a lot of that has to do with pandemic, with, extra years that are given to college players. And I fully support it. I think it's really good for them. But yeah, I think that has brought a lot of, different play styles, different teams. Some of these smaller schools have been able to build a team and keep their core together and build that chemistry. And that's what, some of these bigger schools just don't have. So, Baylor from a couple of years ago when they won, they kind of kept their core together and they kind of developed them over a couple of years. And they were able to bring that into the tournament. And now they've consistently been a top school in the Big 12. So I think we're going to see another shift here soon. And I don't know if that's because, players are starting to go to the G League early. Some of these top talents, like Jalen Green did, Scoot Henderson is right now. I don't know if we're going to see more of that so that they can start making money earlier. But with the NIL deals, I think they're still consistently going to go to college as well. But it's going to bring more opportunities for more people as well.
Definitely, I agree. Yeah, the G League and then Euro leagues and maybe even more like Japanese, Asian leagues. I think those are on the rise, and I think, NIL does put another wrench into all of that, but the money was always a big factor, and I think the G League kind of stepping up over the past few years and really developing more into an actual like semi-pro, transitioning into the NBA league is huge for that as well. So it's going to be a tough battle for the NCAA and NBA over the next 5 years to see what the future is going to be like.
Yeah, I like that. All right, moving on to this next year. We got to do our too early.
Oh God,
our too early champion. Our too early champion. There's a lot of talk this year about how Kansas can repeat, and the ability to repeat as a college champion is very different from like NBA or anything like that. People thought Kansas was going to do it. Now they're talking about how UConn can do the same thing. It's not going to happen. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen. They have the talent, but it's not going to go well. They're probably going to be a top 10 team, be a top seed going in the tournament and probably make another run, kind of like Kansas did. But I think it's going to be the same result where they're going to get knocked out relatively early, maybe, Sweet 16, possibly make it to the Elite Eight, but someone's going to upset them. I still really like Miami's team. Okay. They were my favorite to go into this year to win the championship. And if Isaiah Wong comes back, which there's speculation that he will, just to compete again and maybe boost his draft stock even more. If he comes back, I think they have a fantastic chance to come back and compete for a championship. If not, I think Kentucky is finally going to break through next year. I think Calipari is Calipari is a great coach. It's just, with all that raw talent, it's hard to get them to mesh really well because they all want to show off their skills and they all want to be drafted high in the NBA draft. So if they can just build a nice team chemistry, and I think it's finally going to happen next year with them bringing in 3 of the top 5 recruits, I think they'll finally do it next year and really compete and possibly win a championship.
I could see that. Kentucky was on my radar. another team on my radar, and I was big on them this year, was TCU. I think it all depends on who stays, right? I think TCU, if they return the core, they have a decent shot of going far. And I really like Texas this tournament. I don't know why. I just enjoyed watching them. Again, I don't know who's staying, who's leaving. Anything can happen over the summer. But those are my early picks. Those two, and then Kentucky as well. I think you're right. UConn's not going to repeat. I think it's astronomically much harder to repeat in the NCAA, like you said, especially this day and age and everything that we just talked about. And UConn was kind of a weird, like they had a weird path. They dominated in many of the games, but watching them, I wasn't like, oh, they're clearly the winners in like the Sweet 16. I wasn't like, oh, they're the front runner. I still had many other teams who I thought would beat them. So I think the same thing might happen next year. We're going to have our top picks, Alabama, Houston, and then someone will just come out of nowhere and the madness of March will happen and they'll make it to the Final Four and get lucky maybe. That's all it really takes in this tournament. So it'll be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because you're right. UConn kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, they were a 4 seed. They won the Big East tournament, but they still were only projected as a 4 seed.
Yeah.
If they didn't win the Big East, who knows? They could have been a 6 or maybe even like a 7 seed. We don't know. But yeah, you're right. They did kind of come out of nowhere. They just kind of hit their groove at the right time. They peaked at the perfect time.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's what helped them win a championship. So yeah, we'll see who kind of builds that chemistry at the end of the year. Kind of like UConn did.
Yeah.
All right, we got to give a nice shout out. It's actually to an old host of this podcast right here. All right, Josh Nowak, the winner of our March Madness bracket. Huge shout out to Josh.
Way to go, Josh.
He picked the winner. That's really what it came down to.
It really is.
He picked UConn winning. I think we were all above him until he got that win.
Until the very, I'm proud of us as a group, and it makes me happy that we're doing a sports podcast and we were the other 3 in the top 4. Like we were there, and then he just happened to pick UConn. Me and Paige picked Alabama. You picked Texas. So just happened to be that way. But yeah, no, he picked the winner, and that's really all that mattered. And I guess that's all that ever matters in the end.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yep, you're right.
We'd
shout out to Josh.
Love to have you back on as a guest in the future. Just throwing that out there.
Hint. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the NBA. There's realistically 2 games left for everybody. It's coming down to the wire for the play-in spots left. Thunder is still there. Lakers, Pelicans, and I think Timberwolves as well, all clinched. Thunder and Dallas are tied for that last spot, but Thunder have the advantage there from head-to-head games. And it's coming down to the wire. It's going to be a nice last weekend for the NBA. But there's something bigger going on. It's the NBA MVP vote. Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic. Justin, who's your pick for the MVP?
The MVP, let's get this out of the way. The MVP, what does it mean in the NBA? Is it truly the most valuable player of, if they weren't on the team, their team would plummet? Or is it just the best player in the league? Is it the best scorer? Because it's usually tied so heavily to offensive stats. I don't know. I don't know what my definition is. I don't know what everyone else's, but it seems to differ between anyone and everyone. Saying that, my vote for the MVP this year would go to Jokic. I think my bias and the way I lean is that if he wasn't on the team, they may not make the playoffs because of how competitive the West is. Right, if you put a standard performing center there, they might not make the playoffs. For the 76ers with Embiid, again, yes, Embiid definitely helps the team, but just the way the East plays out, and if you got rid of Embiid and put a regular performing center, I think they would still have a solid spot in the Eastern playoffs. I think their team is more well-rounded in the fact that they can make it to the playoffs, but they wouldn't win. I think the Nuggets as a team rely heavily on him, and for that reason, I would give him the most valuable player. Without him, their offense has to completely change. Everything has to change, in my opinion. So I would give it to Jokic. I know there's been a lot of discussion about giving him another one, and I feel bad for Embiid over the past few years having to struggle to, get mentioned, and then he's finally mentioned, and then he gets beat. Giannis, Jokic, it's like, and he's putting up amazing numbers by any other center any other year. He's still putting up amazing numbers, so I feel bad for him. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think Jokic is just the more valuable player, which I feel bad for saying, but it's true.
I'm on the other fence, so
Whoa.
I like where this is going. So I would pick Embiid, right? I think you're overvaluing the 76ers. James Harden has played great this year because he's been a passer, because he has been willing to give up some shooting ability to Embiid. And I think if you take Embiid off that team, I don't think they make playoffs.
Really?
I really don't. I think he is such a difference maker down low. Yeah, he doesn't have the passing ability that Jokic has, and he doesn't have that big body presence in terms of rebounding, but he is such a scoring presence that even double teaming him, it just doesn't work. He is an elite scorer, and he is willing his team to the playoffs. And if he can stay healthy throughout the playoffs, they have a good chance at making a run. It's going to be how the support players play when they face Boston, because that collision course is going to happen. The Bucks are going to get the number one. The Bucks have the number one seed. Celtics have clinched the second spot, and the 76ers, I think, they're either one win away or like a win or maybe a loss away from
close.
Yeah. As long as they finish out the season correctly, they're going to face Boston in that second round after they face the Nets, which
they should beat the Nets.
Kendrick Perkins talking a big game on how the Nets are not going to be an easy out. Okay.
It'll be a battle.
I love how the Nets play, okay?
Yeah.
I love that Mikal Bridges has made a name for himself, and being on the Suns, he couldn't perform and show off his scoring ability because of Booker and Ayton and everybody else. I love what he's been doing in Brooklyn, but they're not going to compete with the 76ers.
Yeah, it'll be 5 or 6. 6 most. I can't imagine 7. I agree.
So once they face Boston in that second round, it's going to be how their supporting players play. Because Embiid will still put up enough points to keep them in games, but they need their supporting cast.
Yeah, that's true. So I pulled up comparison stats just because I was curious. And I know that Embiid's been scoring a lot more than Jokic, but I didn't know the exact numbers. So he's averaging, 33 points per game, and Jokic is 24, which is low, but he has more assists and rebounds. But,
Absolutely.
But the main comparison, or stat that I was looking at, was when Embiid's on the floor for the 76ers, their offensive rating is 118. And then when he's off, it's 112.5. So that's the difference between the second best team and the 24th best team offensive ratings in the league. For the Nuggets, when Jokic is on the court, it's 124.5. And then when he's off the floor, it's 102.6, which is the difference between the first and the 30th. So they're the only other bigger difference when that happens. So I just wanted to use that to back my argument. It seems like Embiid has a bigger impact because it's scoring, and I agree. I think he is the better scorer. He's in recent memory, he's the most dominant big man besides Shaq, right? He's the closest thing to Shaq that we've ever gotten, except for Yao, I guess. But Yao was a completely different player. Jokic is more of like the modern twist on what a center can do. And to me, it's just, I don't know. I think it would be a disservice to him and the game of basketball to give him all this credit and praise for being such an offensive asset to the team, right? Passing, he can rebound, he can make plays happen, but then just say, oh, well, Embiid scores more, so we'll give it to him. Which, normally I'm in that camp. I think scoring is the most important thing on the court, and I think everyone else would agree with that. But it's just, there's so many different aspects of the game that Jokic touches that Embiid can't. So that's why I lean that way. But I like the argument. I like the scoring argument.
So I see your point, right? So here's my question. Jokic would be the first three-peat MVP since Larry Bird. We have seen so many players since then. We've seen Shaq. We've seen Kobe. We have seen LeBron, Steph Curry.
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Even Giannis, I think, is, that next step.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the NBA wants to justify having Nikola Jokic as the next three-peat MVP. So I think they'll give it to Embiid, and I think they should give it to Embiid off of that reasoning as well.
I think you're right in that they're not going to want to fight the PR and the storylines and all that stuff. Completely agree. And that's fair. I think what's tough about that argument is there have been players between Larry Bird and now that should have gotten a three-peat probably.
You're right. Absolutely.
So, like, if I were to revise history, yeah, I would give maybe a couple players a three-peat. Maybe a LeBron or a Michael Jordan a three-peat. But we can't do that, obviously. We can't go back and change the history books. So it seems unfair for us to then take it away from Jokic because history was the way it is. It's just a battle. At that point, it turns into a PR battle, right? And I don't think that should be the deciding factor. But it probably will be. You're probably right. It will go that way.
Yeah, the NBA has always done that too, where they don't want to get in a rut, and they will give it to someone else just to change it up, rather than giving it to the most deserving person.
That's true.
LeBron has been a witness to that.
Oh yeah.
Even just his stats alone should justify him winning MVP probably 6 or 7 times.
Yes.
But they wouldn't do it just because he was consistently that player, and Jokic is falling into that same category as well.
That's true. Yeah, I could easily see him giving it to Embiid, and I mean he's been putting up numbers for the past 3 years, and it's not that he doesn't deserve it. I just think it's a disservice to the art of basketball, like the complete thing that everyone talks about when they say, "Oh, the NBA is just all about scoring." It's like, well, then you got Jokic, or different players that do these different things that, when it comes time to honor them for those reasons, that they don't, and it's just like it's a battle that they're always going to have to fight.
Yeah, I get it. I think they will consistently just fight that just to make sure that they don't fall into the same rut of the same player winning the same award every single year.
That's true. That's very true.
So that brings up another point here. The 65 game rule for NBA awards, that any player that wants to win an NBA award at the end of the year, whether that be Sixth Man of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP,
Rookie of the Year,
they have to play 65 games. How do you feel about it?
I love it. I think it's a great combatant to the resting that coaches are doing nowadays. And at the end of the day, if you want to be considered the most valuable player, you can't play 30 games, which is already factored into it now. Like, people have made that argument for many players in the past. But this is like now an enforceable rule that I think, like, you'll see superstars pushing against their ownership and coaches saying, "No, I need to play. I want to win MVP. You can't just sit me just because we're playing the Pistons this night and we don't need this win. Like, I want to play. So I love it. I think
love that Pistons
yes.
shout out there.
We want Victor. But anyways, I think at the end of the day, it's going to help with that, and people want to see their players, their stars play. So if you're a fan and you're going to a game and your player is sitting because the potential MVP of the league sitting because he needs to rest for 25 games a season, it's brutal to hear as a fan and someone who looks up to a lot of these guys as just role models and competitors. Like, I would be disappointed if I was going to see Michael Jordan and he was resting, but yet he won MVP somehow. Like, I don't know. I love the rule. What do you think about it?
I absolutely love it. I just think that I even think they could have gone a step further. I think they could have. See, this is where it's tough, right? Because then you have a player that is actually injured, and he may be the best player in the world, and my argument was to go to 70 games. It's tough, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't go that
finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
It's finding that sweet spot because that'd be missing 12 games, and in the long scheme of things, that is quite a few games. But then you're going to have that one exception that probably should have won the MVP.
Yeah, you'll have LeBron at 69 games, and he should have easily won it. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's tough because I think ultimately they made the right decision in 65 games. I just think that they could have even taken it a step further, but I see why they chose it. I see why they stuck there.
Yeah, I think it's a good line.
But yeah, I love it. I love it. It needed to happen. I think they even need to do more because I don't think you're going to have players like Kawhi who truthfully probably don't care about the MVP vote.
Yeah. And
they'd rather just, compete for that championship. And if it requires resting it is what it is. Mm-hmm. So it's good for the absolute stars that are pushing for an MVP, but it still doesn't change the fact that there's too much resting going on.
Yeah, I agree. And you say Kawhi, he might not care. And that's completely fair. I know Damian Lillard was talking about, the ring culture is a huge thing right now in the NBA, which I would argue it's always been, so okay, whatever. And then some players are like, oh, you're only playing for the MVP, you don't care about winning. The semantics of that have always been weird to me, how you can say, oh, he's just playing for the stats, but if you're getting a 30-point triple-double, you're very clearly helping your team try to win games. It's not like you're sabotaging it. Right? When Russell Westbrook was averaging his triple-double, people were like, oh, he's just stat padding. It's yeah, he's getting a rebound and then going down and dunking it. That's what do you any other scenario, that's what you want out of any other player. So stuff like that, it's a lose-lose for the player. Okay, you're not going for the ring, but you're stat padding. It's how do you win on that? So yeah, if they choose to rest, right, like you said, and they go below the 65 game threshold, then yeah, that sucks, but they didn't play enough to be the most valuable player in the league. So I think 65 is the right line to draw.
All right. Let's see what happens. Is that no, that's not till June, isn't it? The vote? Yeah. It's June is the vote. Mm-hmm. We get to sit on our hands and wait for it.
Exactly. And we'll get to watch the playoffs and then be like, well, they should factor in the playoffs. Or do they factor in the playoffs? No, they don't, but they should. And then get all this conversation going. So
I never understood that. If it's a regular season award, why are they waiting till June?
No idea. They should. Maybe not to inflate egos for the postseason and hype a team up that shouldn't be hyped up and put a target on. I don't know. That's my only logical thinking on that. I think it should just be a full season. You have to take into account the playoffs, and if you don't make it to the championship, but you're still the best player, then give it to the best player, which is a hard game to play as well. So we'll see what happens. I think that might be the next step in this evolution of updates. Is what to do about, do we give the award beforehand or do we include the playoffs?
I wouldn't hate them including the playoffs.
I wouldn't either.
I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should just be a full season. I think it should It's just then you get to the point where, by the time that they're calling it, it's like, uh, it's mid-June. At what point do you hand it off to the next person? You know what I mean? Like, are you only going to give it to someone who's in the championship? Probably not, but they can make a justification like, hey, this player should get it
Yeah.
because he's in the championship over this person. There's always going to be criticism.
Yeah. I think, honestly, a way I've been thinking about it recently is they should just have a set of criteria, and whoever's the best out of a majority of that criteria is the MVP. Whoever has the most points per game, rebounds per game, steals, assists, blocks, makes it the furthest in the playoffs, who has the highest win percentage, or all these different things. Just have like 30 different stats, and whoever has the most, give it to that person. Can't argue the numbers. It takes away the fun and the in between the lines play that kind of happens, but I think it might be a potential route for them to go down in the future.
I see it. I can see it happening. Sports are becoming more stats driven anyway. It's not a feel for the game anymore. I could see them making the change to it.
Yeah.
We're going to have robo umps here soon, calling balls and strikes.
I mean, they kind of need to, but.
Oh, well, now that we brought it up, let's roll right into it. Let's talk pitch clock. This has been a great addition to the game, okay? I'm thrilled about it, okay? 26 minutes is the average time of play taken off each game.
Perfect.
Each game. That is insane. Literally of them doing nothing. Them adjusting their batting gloves and stepping off the mound because he didn't like the call. I don't care if you didn't like the call. Throw the ball. It just grew to a point where, especially in the playoffs, the games were, going to 4.5 hours. Like, for a baseball game, that's insane. Absolute madness. And this is going to take off so much time in the playoffs. I can't wait for them to, bring up the stats on how much time it takes off of playoff games, because it's going to be like 40 minutes.
I believe it.
Just watching this game, just watching the game of baseball now is so thrilling. It is completely changed the game.
I don't know about thrilling, but it's way more enjoyable. I completely agree. I wouldn't say it's thrilling yet, but the not having to wait 20 seconds between each pitch is very nice. It's a quality of life for baseball fans that I don't think we realized until it happened. I completely agree.
Yeah, anyone who says that, the only argument is it affecting games at the end of the game. Okay, if it's in the first inning and someone gets called out, who cares? You have 18 more outs to make up for it. The only thing I can see is like, ninth inning, someone gets called third strike because they weren't in the batter's box. Okay, I could see an argument for that. It's no different than a shot clock. It's no different than a delay of game penalty in the NFL. It's something that was needed, but that's where your argument, could be justified. But everyone's getting so upset because of the Manny Machado thing that happened, because he got thrown out for a called third strike. I don't care. Get in the box.
You know the rules. That's my thing. Is everyone knows the rules before they start playing, and I get it. Baseball is a very mental sport compared to like basketball or football, and it's just that mental game of it's you against the pitcher and you gotta battle it out. But at the end of the day, you don't need to be doing. The pitcher's also on the clock, right? He has to do his thing as well. He can't be sitting there, and I don't know why it's such a big issue for the batter, but it doesn't seem to be, at least, such a big issue for the pitcher, right? The pitchers used to take a ton of time too. They would, do the sandbag in their hands. They would take a breather, rest their arm for a second, which is another argument as well of, they're not getting rest in between repetitions, but I just don't think they need it. But it really irks me when everyone's like, oh, the batters are getting screwed over. And it's like, well, the pitcher has to do the same thing. They're playing by the same exact rules. They're still up there. They have to pitch. They have to get set and do the same thing over and over without as much rest. So I get why the old heads and the powers that be that have been controlling baseball for the past 40 years are upset about it, but baseball has been a dying sport and they needed to do something. And I think this is the best way they could have done it.
So before this even happened, right? My whole thought process was this was such a change for the pitchers. And, the pitchers are kind of getting screwed on this. And this is why they're doing this, so that there's more hitting. It's almost been the opposite.
Yeah.
And I didn't really expect that just because, the batter's on the clock too. And yes, I get that. Like, he can't adjust his gloves. He can't do his routine. But that's the thing is batters will adjust to the point where they don't need to be doing that anymore. Like they're going to get in a routine where, maybe college does it too. And, they're prepared for it already when they go to the major leagues. And yeah, I guess I didn't really think about the batter as much as the pitcher. And I thought, there'd be more blown out arms. And I guess we'll see at the end of the year, when you're throwing that many pitches that fast, that consistently. But I mean, it's just another adjustment that needs to be made. And everybody's in the same boat. It's not like one team's favored in this situation.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't control time at this point.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, that was our MLB rant for the day. I absolutely had a thrilling time. Baseball is my first sport that I absolutely fell in love with, and this change was needed. And I'm falling back in love with baseball. I'm not going to talk about it as much, I promise, but we just had to talk about it because it was a major thing in sports. All right, let's roll along. Let's go to Twitter fingers.
Twitter fingers.
Tweet tweet. I love these intros. I love them. All right. There was another college champion, LSU Tigers, women's basketball champions. 3 seed over an Iowa team that a lot of people thought should have been a 1 seed. That had Caitlin Clark, probably the best player in women's college basketball. And LSU pretty much took her out of the game, made her a non-factor by getting her in foul trouble. And more props to the LSU Tigers. They had a great season. A lot of people didn't, have a lot of faith in them going into the tournament, and they proved everybody wrong. Even the First Lady of the United States. So, for those of you who didn't see it, Jill Biden made a point to invite the Iowa Hawkeyes, the loser of the national championship game, to the White House along with the national champion LSU Tigers. This has never been done before. And it shouldn't happen, in my opinion. And I think the only reason why is because Jill Biden loved how Caitlin Clark played. And, fair. She's a great player. But a horrible decision. And Angel Reese, the star of the LSU team, tweeted out that they are not going to the White House, that they are, quote, going to the Obamas instead. What a tweet. What a tweet.
Angel Reese has been fun to experience the past, 2 weeks during the playoffs, and now this whole debacle. You're right. What a tweet. And I feel bad for Jill Biden, the First Lady, because she was saying that out of the kindness of her heart. And, this over the past 5 years, it's been a big push for women's sports to get the recognition, the viewership. And it has been, rightfully so. The championship game up until about beginning of the fourth quarter was very close. It felt like a great game. But she was tweeting it out of that side of it of, oh, great game. I want all the women that can be there to be there and come and have fun and celebrate. And that's fine, and she's probably a very lovely lady, and that was very nice of her to say. As a competitor, and in the basketball world and sports world in general, you don't even think about that. That is unacceptable. You do not invite the losers to come with the winners to celebrate. That's just despicable, and I feel bad for her. But Angel Reese's tweet was hilarious. She had a couple. I think she had like an Instagram caption or something that also mentioned like Joe Biden, like, what are you even saying? Like, what are you talking about? This isn't happening. She's like, oh my god.
What's even better is this was after the, can't see me,
The taunting debacle.
the taunting, which first of all I loved, because I mean Caitlin Clark did it in prior games, so it wasn't like kicking while it was down, like that was there was malice to that, and purposely so, but it was sportsmanlike.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I said, kicking him like they were down.
Yeah.
This was after that.
Yes, this is after
which
the
makes
whole.
makes it even better.
Oh, chill.
After they won, so there was already bad blood between the teams, and it just made it 10 times better.
Oh my god. Yeah, the whole taunting thing was such an interesting wave that just took over, and we're commenting on it now too. Like you said, Caitlin Clark did it previously. It was a little bit different. The scenarios were a little bit different. And Angel made it a very point to go up to Caitlin and do it like 4 times. Okay, that's fine. But again, as competitors, you do that. You taunt, you trash talk. It may not be seen or heard by the media at every moment, but I'm sure you go ask any of the NBA players, WNBA players, like, there's trash talking happening all the time. So to see some public
all the time,
that's I'm sure players pride themselves on that. So in this scenario, it was a lot, but at the same time they were winning. Like, she has the right to do that. Caitlin was winning, and she did it to other teams. Now Angel Reese and the LSU team was winning. They have the right to do it to them. It's fine. And like you said, it wasn't like she was pushing her or yelling at her face or something. It was just like, you can't see us. We're getting in the ring now. Like, that really divided the world for a second, and I don't know.
Oh my god, yeah.
It was like, I know there was racial.
Twitter was divided.
Yeah, I know there was racial undertones, but at the end of the day, basketball's basketball. It doesn't care who's playing. The winner's the winner, the loser's the loser, and the winner gets the rights to say I'm better than you. So, and that's what Angel did, and I'm happy she did it. But yeah, Jill Biden, what was she thinking? I give her credit that she did. I don't believe an ounce in me that she did it to be, hypocritical or mean to the LSU team. And, again, the racial undertone of that as well. And Angel saying they'll go to Obama's. Okay, that is what it is. But she didn't do that for the racial reasons. She did it to be, encompass.
She tried to be supportive of everybody,
especially
and
of the women's teams that had. It was, I think, a record for the most viewed.
9.9, I think, 9 million,
which is a lot more than many other games in general of any professional sport. So, yeah, give her credit.
Oh, you gotta love it. This is why we have this segment right here. Is this one right here is to get a great laugh.
Oh my God. At the end of the day, the American democracy and open freedom of the press is perfect. Twitter's a free app. You can go on there and see stuff like this all the time. You can see a championship of an LSU basketball team tweeting at the first lady. Like, that's just crazy, and I love it. And I'm happy it is a thing that will continue to stay forever.
Now we just need that in other sports. Baseball in particular. Yes. I think it'd make it more interesting. Instead, they get suspended for a game for a bat flip.
Yeah, that needs to change. But I think they're getting there. Going back to the baseball thing, they will make changes as the modern world catches up to them. So we'll see how that goes.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. That's all we got for you guys this week. I think Paige will be back next week. We'll talk some NFL draft stuff. And we'll talk about the NBA playoffs as well.
Love
First
that.
round starts next week.
Let's
Playing
go.
games start on Tuesday, I believe. So we'll have some reactions to NBA playing games.
Love that. All right. Everyone have a good Easter break if you celebrate. If not, have a fun weekend.
Oh, all right. See you guys next week.